Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Drowning in Travel Photos. And thanks you all for joining us from around the world. I'm Leo, I'm your host today. And as we dive into the fascinating world of imaging and organizing travel photos with the help of Mylio Photos, we all know the same, and I have the same problem as well. It's so easy to shoot thousands of pictures while you're on the go, and but how do we turn that digital chaos into a beautiful and meaningful collection? And that's exactly what we explore today with our speaker. Before we get started, just make a quick housekeeping. And the webinar is being recorded, so you receive a link to rewatch it afterwards, again, also with others. And feel free also to drop into the Mylio community, because there we share a link as well later, and you will find a lot of other webinars from our past. So there's a lot of meaningful content and which really helps you to use Mylio. And if you have questions during the session, please feel free to type them into the Q&A section or into the chat. And we will address them in our dedicated Q&A segment later. And we have also two support members on board who will try to answer any question and also check that nothing is missing. So welcome as well, Guess and Michael from the support team. So now let's get to the highlight of today's session. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest speaker, JC Figueroa. And JC is not only an what is happening with my mouse here? Sorry. Maybe JC is not just a Mylio expert, but also a passionate photographer himself. And with years of experience, he is helping photographers to organize and relieve the memories. And he combines the technical expertise and own creative eye. So it's a perfect guide for today's topic. So please join me in giving a warm virtual welcome to JC. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. And we don't need to look at my picture anymore. If you don't mind going to the next slide, we'll talk briefly about the agenda for today and what we're going to cover. So thanks for joining us. I appreciate the opportunity to show you not just Mylio Photos, but how I use Mylio Photos for my own personal library and how I keep track of all my photos. Here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to briefly talk about how to curate and access all your memories with Mylio Photos. So this will be a brief overview of the Mylio Photos application, just so that everyone that hasn't had an opportunity to see it before becomes somewhat familiar with it, and you can see what it is that Mylio can do for you. Then I'm going to talk about my own travel and underwater photography workflow, how I organize my photos before, during, and after I go on a trip. What do I do with those photos? My editing process, what I do in Mylio versus what I might do in other applications, because Mylio is a great hub to communicate and collaborate with other products. And then once we've seen a little bit of my own travel and photography workflow, we'll talk about the ability to access that library everywhere and having that library protected, because again, this is one of the things that the product allows you to do very well. We'll cover 3-2-1 backup as part of that section. And we'll also cover how to protect your photos and back them up while you're on the go. So while you're traveling, what are some of the techniques and strategies that you can use so that those photos that are being captured while you're away from home are kept safe. And you'll learn how, in many cases, the photos get home before I do. And last but not least, we'll try to leave quite a bit of time at the end for any questions and answers that you might have. And like Leonard said, we have two members of the support team, Michael and Gasson. They're here to answer questions while we're undergoing the presentation. Feel free to put any questions you have in the Q&A section. That way they can either answer it for you right away. And Gas is fluent in German, so if you prefer to ask questions in your native language, he can answer those directly. But then at the end, any questions that they were not able to answer or that they think might be better answered live, we'll address those there. All right, so let's get started. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. And
Just
what you're
short
gonna see
note,
to,
just short note, we see that more than half haven't tried Mylio Photos yet, so probably after
oh
the
wow,
webinar, this figure will go up. So feel
that's
free.
that's good information. That's good to know. Great. So what you're seeing today is my actual personal photo library. So these are real photos from real life. You'll see a lot of underwater photos. You'll see a lot of my family photos. You'll probably see a lot of goofy things because we're a happy family and we're always doing crazy things. But these are real photos from real life. And the first view that you're seeing in this Mylio library is what we call the calendar view. One of the things that Mylio enables you to do is to look at your library of photos or media. It doesn't have to be photos. It can be videos. It can be documents. Anything that you consider in memory can be part of your Mylio library. But Mylio enables you to look at that library in a variety of ways. And many of the ways in which you can look at that library are designed with memory in mind, how you remember things, right? So many of us might remember things based on when something happened. And that's what the calendar view is all about. So here in the calendar view, right now we're in decade mode where I'm seeing the different decades, the 2020s, I can scroll up to the 2010s. And this is a quick view basically of my life. I can go back in time to when my daughter was born in 2003. Sorry, my son was born in 2003, or when my daughter was born in 1995 over here. I can see photos of myself in college and high school. I can go back in time to my brother's wedding and photos of myself as a kid. And then I can see family heirloom photos, photos of my family before I was born. So there's my dad receiving a couple of awards from the military. Here in 1964 is the only photo I have of my grandma. She died well before I met her. So I never met her, but I have this photo to remember her by, and photos of my parents' wedding. I can go all the way back to 1944 is one of the oldest photos I have, and this is a photo of my mother with her grandmother and three of her sisters. And it's a photo that I cherish and I try to preserve for posterity. So all of these things I can access directly in the calendar view. And like I mentioned, I'm on the decade mode here, but I can step into any year. So I can go, for example, here into 2018. It shows me all the different months of the year. I can go into any particular month and I see all the days during that month for which photos were taken. And then I can go into a particular day and see all the photos, in this case, that were taken in May 4th, 2018. And if I open any particular photo, I can get a lot of information about that photo. So I can click the information panel here. And this tells me that this photo was taken with an iPhone Plus 8 Plus camera, the date it was taken. I've added some keywords. There's some smart tags that Mylio has added. So Mylio knows that there's mountains and sky in this photo. It knows that there's a person in the photo. I've also identified the person, so I can have tags for the people that are in my photos. And even has the location because, like I said, this photo was taken with an iPhone, so it has a geotag on the photo, and that location is identified here in Mylio already. So all of that can be accessed very quickly just from the calendar view and going into a single view mode where I'm looking at just one photo. You'll also notice that there's some buttons here on the top. These buttons let me do different things. I can have Mylio show me this photo in the folder view, which we'll discuss in a second. I'm in the calendar, so I'm already there. And then Photo Explorer can show me other things about this photo. It can take me to the location on the map view in Mylio, or it can take me to a website of my choosing, like Google Maps, for example, and show me where that photo was taken in Google Maps. And because it knows who the person is right here, that's my wife, I have the ability to email or text or call my wife, depending on what device I'm on. So if I'm doing this on my phone, I can just tap the button and call her directly. If there's multiple people in the photo, I can see both of them. And if I have their contact information added to Mylio, I could even text the photo to everyone in the group right away. So lots of little things that you can do on any photo. In this case, we started with calendar view, but you can do this with any photo once you find it. The last thing I want you to see about calendar view is this little dots that appear all over the calendar. These are called events. And an event is just that, is a group of photos that signify a particular event. Like here's an event for my daughter's wedding, for my granddaughter being born, for my grandnephew being born. There's different trips, so I can click on any one of these trips and it takes me to all the photos from that trip right there from the calendar view. So lots and lots of ways to organize. And this is just one of the views. This is the view meant for remembering based on when something happened. So if you remember when an event took place, you can go directly to that event. By the way, photos that you scan that have the incorrect dates, you can use Mylio to correct those dates. So all these photos that obviously did not start as digital photos, but came from photos that were scanned, I was able to correct those dates. And if I scroll all the way to the very top of the calendar view, you'll notice that up here, there is a container that says undated. So I have about 1,500 photos that don't have a date. I can go into that container and I can open any one of those photos and I can try to correct those dates right there. Notice that that's me back when I had more hair. And I can use the information panel to go here and either enter the correct date if I know the exact timestamp of that photo. If not, I can be very vague about the date. So if all I know is the decade or the year this was taken, so I look to be about 5 years old, so I'm guessing that was in 1974. So I could say just the year, or I'm wearing shorts, so this must have been in the summer. So I could say this was taken in the summer of 1974 and save that information. And then that photo will present itself correctly in the calendar view based on the information that you put in it. So lots of ways to not only find photos that already have the correct date, but when you're trying to correct the date on a photo, you can do that with a variety of tools right here in the Mylio application. So that's finding photos based on when something happened. How about finding photos based on where something happened? For that, we use the map view. And the map view is going to show me a view of the world. And I can zoom into any area and see photos that were taken in that area. I've only been to Germany a few times, but I spent some time in Kiel. I was working on a mega yacht at the time. So I can see that I can click on that area and see all the photos that I took while I was in that trip. If I go to an area where I take a lot more photos, closer to home where I live here in Seattle, the more I zoom in on that area, the more detail I get about the photos taken in that area. And I can keep zooming in and keep getting more and more detail. In this case, I'm looking at the map in a topographical view. I can use a standard map, a satellite view of the map, or topographical is my favorite. I like it because when I go hiking, I can actually follow along the trail. So here you can actually see the trail that I was following. There's the first photo I took at the beginning of the trail, and then photos that I took along the way. And here's where I set up camp. So I can see a lot of things in the map view. I can also do searches, right? So if I want to find photos that were taken in a specific place, I can say, okay, let's find photos that were taken, in the place where I was born. I was born in Puerto Rico, so I can put the name of the town, and here comes on the search results, and it takes me to that area. And here's photos from that area, either photos that I have from my childhood or photos that I took after the fact during visits. So different places back where I was born. And by clicking on any one of these photos, I can get to those photos very quickly. That's the house where I grew up, where you saw that other photo earlier today. The map view, just like the calendar view, has a container where it shows you the photos that have not yet been correctly geotagged. So if a photo is taken with a camera or a phone that captures geographic location, that information is going to be already in the photo. Mylio is going to read that information and it's going to place that photo in the map on your behalf correctly. But if there's photos that don't have that information, you can use this button on the bottom left corner called View on Tag, and that will take me to all the photos that don't have a geographical location added to them. So here's some photos from my last dive where I took a lot of photos underwater. I can go ahead and geotag all these photos and add a location to them very easily. I'm going to open the places view here and expand this so we can see the map better. And I know that this was taken where I live in Bainbridge Island. And that's in the state of Washington in the United States. So I click in that area and it takes me to Bainbridge Island. Then I can zoom in on the map and go specifically to the location where the photos were taken, which is a little beach called Rockaway Beach. And there's the Rockaway Beach Road. And I went in the water. Let's switch. Yeah, I went in the water right around this area right here. So these photos were all taken right around this area of the water. So I can drag either one photo and click the check mark, or I can select an entire group of photos and drag them all at once. Click that check mark, and now those photos have been geotagged. So if I go back to my map view and I locate that area where I live again, those photos that I just geotagged are going to be found right in that area, right there. So even if the photo has not been geotagged, or you're taking photos with a camera that doesn't use geotagging, you can still add that information and take advantage of this incredible view, the map view, so that you can find photos based on where a photo was taken. So we cover when a photo was taken, where a photo was taken, but really one of the most important things that we have when it comes to our photography is who is in the photo. And for that, we use the people view. The people view is a way to aggregate and have instant collections of anyone that's important in your life. And I have a lot of people in my people view. I could scroll and scroll and scroll. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a search in page function to find my daughter. And I'm just going to start typing her name, Madeline. I'm going to hit enter. It takes me right to that container. And if I open that container, now I see every photo that I have of my daughter, all the way from when she was a little baby and a young girl. And I can scroll all the way to today, where it's hard to get a photo where she's not holding her own daughter. So all of these photos, and you'll notice that there's about close to 4,000 photos of my daughter. I didn't have to go and tag every single one of these photos. I didn't go and on every photo just found the face and put her name. I taught Mylio who this person was by manually tagging about a dozen photos. And then Mylio goes about the process of finding more photos of that person. You'll notice that here next to the number of photos that we have, there's a little question mark. And if I hover over that area, is going to tell me that there's one photo to confirm. So if I open her container again, and I switch from looking at all of the photos to only looking at proposed photos, it's telling me that I found a photo that it believes is Madeline and it's not. In this case, that's actually my granddaughter, Lucy. So Mylio got confused. We're gonna say that is Lucy. But that is how Mylio goes about the job of finding all the photos of one person. And just like the map and the calendar view have little areas where you have a little bit of homework to do, you know, photos that need to be dated correctly, photos that need to be geotagged. Here we have faces that Mylio has recognized there's a face in the photo, but it has not identified who that face belonged to. And that's what this untagged container in the top right corner, top left corner, I'm sorry, is. So it tells me that there's 1,265 faces that have not been assigned to anyone. I can open that area and I can go one photo at a time and turn on face tagging and try to type who this person is. Or I can use a better tool for this, which is our batch tagging tool. It's under our tools menu. And what Mali is going to do in this instance is going to aggregate all the photos that it believes belong to one person. In this case, the first person is my granddaughter. So here's all photos of my granddaughter, Lucy. Mali has aggregated them all and is asking me if I believe these are correct, and they are. I scrolled through them. These are all Lucy. None of them are incorrect. So I can just go here and click the approve button. And now all those faces have been tagged. Now it's moving to the next. I don't know why Lucy's there, but I can correct that right here. These two photos are of my wife, Sarah. That is correct, so I'll approve that. And it will do that and keep moving through the photos until there's no photos left. And a lot of these are not correct. That is Alex. So that is how you can correctly aggregate all of these photos into these personal collections and have all the photos of one person easily foundable in one place. And as we correct and add this metadata, this allows us to do very complex searches in Mylio, right? So, so far I've shown you the people view, the map view, zoom out in the map view again, and the calendar view. But we also have a normal view called all photos. And this is where you see every photo in your library, right? So if I were to open the information panel here and I make sure that no photos are selected, it's telling me, oh, there's about 50,000 photos being displayed in this particular portion of my library. If I wanted to find something specific, well, I could do a lot of things, right? I could sort the photos in different ways. Right now, they're sorted by ratings. So my 5-star photos are at the top. I could sort by date or by the name of the file. But maybe I just want to find a very specific set of photos. Like maybe I want to find photos of my daughter. Let's add a filter here for my daughter's name. I'll start typing her name and it tells me, okay, I can filter by person by Madeline's name. And then I want to find photos of my daughter where she's next to the water. So I can start typing the word water. And Mylio shows me that one of the smart tags that it creates, one of the AI-driven pieces of information it has added to photos is water. So now I'm seeing photos of my daughter where she is close to the water. The more metadata and information that you aggregate and add to your photos, the easier it is to do this kind of quick filters. In this case, I show you a filter. I can also do a search. So I'm going to move from my all photos view to my dynamic search view. And I'm going to tell Mylio that I want to find photos of myself and my wife, Sarah. And Mylio is saying, okay, there's about 1,500 photos of you and Sarah. It also tells me that there's text in some photos that have JC and Sarah in the text. So if I open one of these photos, there is some wedding notes from our wedding, and you'll notice that JC and Sarah are in the text there. You'll also notice in those search results, there's this other photo. I think that other photo is being filtered out because I'm in my specific public view. I'm not showing private photos. But on the regular photo results, there's about 1,500 photos, and some of these photos are Sarah and I, but some of them also have other people in them. And what I want is just photos of only Sarah and myself. So I can say, okay, Mylio, show me photos of Sarah and JC where the face count, meaning the number of faces in the photo, only equals 2. And now Mylio takes the results down to 854. And in this case, there's only or mostly photos of just the two of us. And I can narrow this further. I could say, show me photos of Sarah and I where there's only 2 people in the photo and the photo was taken in Puerto Rico. Now there's only 192. And then I can say, show me the same results, but only photos taken with a Canon camera. So now I'm down to 86 photos. So if I click on that, I can, find our wedding photos. So this is how Mylio works. It lets you aggregate your entire library of photos into one easily managed library, and it gives you an incredible array of tools so that you can consume and enjoy that library in different ways. You can do anything from looking at all your photos and using filters or searches to narrow down what portion of your library you're looking at, or you can look at photos in a calendar view, you can look at a map, you can look at groups of photos of a particular person. You can also create albums, and albums are something very common. We all have used applications that let you create special collections or albums. Albums in Mylio are really, I think they're really cool because they have some added features. For example, here's an album of our previous house, a home we just sold. And you'll notice that within that album, there's 1,000 photos, but 5 sub-albums. So I can have a hierarchical view of a collection, even within an album. I can also share those albums with other people. So you'll notice that some of these have a little blue globe on them. Those are libraries that have been shared. So if I go here to all these photos of my granddaughter Lucy, and I open the information panel, you'll notice that this is a share album that I publish using Mylio's share albums functionality. I can copy that link, and it's a semi-private link, meaning you're not going to go and find this album online unless you have that link. It's not something that you're going to be able to search in Google or another web browser and find. You have to have the link. But once you have the link, you can go to a web browser and paste that link, and Mylio will show you a collection of all those photos from that album that I created very, very easily. So this is a great way for you to share photos with others. And notice that you can even add a download button so they can add all the photos, or they can simply enjoy them right here in the web gallery in at any time. So I send a lot of photos of the grandkid to my mom this way, so she can go and look at them on her iPad. All right, and last but not least is the folder view. And the folder view is very important for us at Mylio because this represents where your photos live in your storage systems. So the folder view is going to be a direct representation of how my photos are stored in my devices. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this when we get to the section about protection in a few minutes. But really briefly, if I go to any folder here, like the test folder, I have a number of subfolders here. I'm gonna split my screen and bring up the macOS Finder. If I was on a Windows computer, this would work exactly the same way. I'm gonna go to main media, which is one of the hard drives that keeps a replica of my Mylio library. And notice there's a Mylio folder there. If I open that folder, there is a test folder just like the one I was using. And in there, there's all the photos or all the folders that are part of my Mylio library. If I create a new folder here and call it new folder 001, and I create that folder appears in the storage on my hard drive right away. And if I take some photos, let's find some photos here, maybe photos of Scooter the cat. And I'm going to move those photos to that new folder. There it is, new folder 001. Those photos have moved in Mylio, but notice that the photos have also moved in the hard drive. So the actual files are being moved on your behalf right there in the file system. So even if you want to work outside of Mylio, you're able to do that. And this is a good segue to talk about how I organize my photos during travel. So one of the first things I do, and you'll notice that my top level folders, one of the folders that contains the most photos is this folder called trips, because a lot of the photos that I take are taken during a trip. So in this top level folder, if I open it, there's a folder for every trip that I've taken. And I'm gonna scroll down here to the bottom. They're sorted alphabetically, but we can sort them by date created. And right here is the last trip I went to. It was to the island of Roatan. It's an island off of the coast of Honduras. And that was a dive trip. And I created this folder as an empty folder before I even went on the trip. My next trip is not until 2026, but I could go ahead and create the folder for that trip right now. We're going to go to Indonesia in 2026. So I can create that folder, and that folder exists, but it has no content in it yet. Notice that it's a new folder at the very top because we're sorted by date. Once I start putting photos in that folder during that trip, the folder will appear in the correct location. But let's open this Roatan 2024 folder. And what you'll notice is that there's a subfolder and then a lot of loose media, about 289 photos that were taken topside. And then all of my underwater photos are in their own folder. What I'm able to do by having this folder created ahead of time is that when I'm on the location on any one of my devices, I can import the photos directly to that folder. So when I was in Roatan, I had my laptop and my iPad with me, and all I had to do was take the memory card from my camera, connect it to Mylio, and I was able to import photos directly into this Roatan 2024 folder. And the photos were being replicated and synchronized across all of my devices anytime I was connected to the internet. But even if I wasn't connected to the internet, I was starting that organization process right away. And then the next thing I do with those underwater photos is I start rating them, right? So I can go in here and I might want to crop this photo. If it's a simple edit, if it's something that I can do right in Mylio, I'll just go ahead and do it. I can open the information panel and go to the edit section, and I can correct some things about the exposure of this photo. Maybe I want to bring the shadows down. Maybe I want to crop this photo. So I'll go into the cropping tool and just get rid of the extra blue there and make this photo a little bit more appealing by removing all the extra stuff that I didn't want. Maybe I want to use some of Mylio's auto color or auto tone tools to correct the color and the exposure on the photo. I even have a histogram that will show me underexposed and overexposed areas, so I can see that there's a little bit of overexposure, so I can adjust that down. Maybe bring the highlights down so I no longer have overexposed areas. So a lot of easy things that I can do right there. And then I can say, okay, I'm going to rate this photo. I'm going to open the rating systems here. And I think this is a 3-star photo. This is a photo that I would be happy to show somebody, but it's not my best work, right? Right here in Mylio, I can either go one photo at a time, or I can very quickly review my photos in a different way. I can launch something called Quick Review. Amalia is going to change. It's going to give me a film strip at the bottom, and it's going to give me tools for me to keep or reject photos. So let's say that this is a photo that I don't think is good enough, or maybe this is just a 2-star, and then it moves to the next photo. This one's out of focus, so I'm going to use the reject flag to reject it. That one, I'm going to reject that one. That one's overexposed, so I'm going to reject it. So very quickly, I can go through all of these photos and have all of those rejection flags or those ratings done very, very quickly. And I can do this on the go. So I'm going to share my screen from my iPad here. But I could do the same thing with my phone. It'll take me just a second. So this is the screen from my iPad that you're seeing right now. Let's make it a little bit larger. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the Mylio application here. And I have the same tools in the iPad that I had on the computer. I can go over here to the folder view, and I can navigate to the exact same folder. There's Roatan 2024. And I can do the same type of work that I was doing with my computer, but with my iPad instead. And in quick review mode on the iPad, I can use something called gestures, where I think this photo has too much backscatter on it, so I'm going to reject it. So I'm going to swipe left, and that rejects the photo. This photo is, it's too far, is underexposed. Again, I'm going to reject that photo by just swiping with my fingers on the screen to the left. This photo I think is pretty cool. It's something that I think I could color correct and make better. So I'm going to keep that photo. I could click or tap the flag, or I can swipe that photo right. And now that photo, if I go back to it, you'll notice that it has a flag for keeping that photo. Likewise, I can rate a photo right there. I can say, oh, this is a 3-star photo, and I'm just swiping my finger up or down on the screen. So very quickly, I can go through photos, and using gestures, I can accept or reject a lot of photos and get to a state very quickly where most of my photos have been organized in some fashion. And the work that I do on one device is going to transfer to the other device. So if I go here to the same, the computer again, you'll notice that those photos that I rejected with the iPad, or that I added a rating to, a 3-star rating to, that information has already transferred to my computer, even though I did it on the iPad. So this is a great way for you to work on any device that's in front of you and be able to keep your photos organized and move them into the kind of type of organization that you want. And the level of organization that you can do with any photo is almost endless. For example, I can go here to all of the media that I took topside, where there are photos of people, and I can launch the batch tagging tool, and it's going to allow me to only tag photos that are part of that folder. I'm sorry, I moved away from the folder. So let's say I want to tag all these photos, all the faces in this photo. I can do them one at a time by just typing Sarah and my name, or I can use the batch tagging tool to tag the photos that are part of that folder. I can also do other things like the ratings or the rejection and acceptance flag. I can also organize the photos in subfolders, right? So one of the things that I do during my dives is I keep track of what photos were part of a single dive just by looking at the timestamps on those photos. So if I go here to the very top, this photo, the first photo, was taken at 11:42 a.m. And I know that every dive is roughly an hour long. So if I go and find the last photo that was taken just an hour later, I know that all of these photos, and there we are at the next dive site. I can tell because I took a photo of everyone getting into the water. So this is the last photo from the previous dive. I can select them all, and I can now move these photos to a new folder. I can create a subfolder within my trips folder. So I can go here to trips. I can go to the Roatan folder. Oh, wrong year. That is Roatan in 2007 versus 2024. So I can go here to the Roatan underwater folder, create a new folder and call it dive 1 and create. And now those photos have been moved to a subfolder within the underwater folder. So I can do this and keep organizing my photos more and more and more. But what's important is that a lot of the work that I do it on location, and that organization information gets translated to all of my other devices. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how your entire library can be accessible on any device that you have. For that, I'm going to switch to what is called the Mylio dashboard, which is a place where you can get statistical information and organization about how your Mylio account is set up. I'm going to click on devices, and you'll see all of the devices that are part of my Mylio account. I have the Mac Studio, which is the computer I'm on right now. I have 2 laptops, my old laptop, which I'm decommissioning and getting rid of, but I have a new MacBook Air. So if I turn that computer on, that computer will come online. You'll see the text change from gray to white. There it is. And what I can see is that that computer is in sync. It has a check mark on it, where my old computer is missing 2,000 photos. And my Surface tablet is missing 80 photos. But Mylio, every time those devices come online, it's going to make sure that the synchronization between your devices, not only the photos themselves, but any organization information that you've done, like rating a photo or cropping a photo or doing anything else with a photo, that is being transferred to every single device. So all the work that I did on my laptop on location gets translated to my computers at home. And more importantly, it gets translated to devices that we designate as a vault. Now, a vault is just a designation or a device sync policy we assign to a device. So you'll notice that I have 4 devices that have the nomenclature or the denomination of being a vault. 3 of them are hard drives, and 1 of them is a cloud storage system with a company called Backblaze. All of these have my entire library in its full original quality resolution. So every single one of these drives or this cloud storage have my entire library, all 54,000 of my photos at full resolution, full size. Other devices like my Pixel phone doesn't have a lot of storage in it. It's a device with limited internal storage. So for that device, I designated it to be catalog only. And that means that, as you can see here, that device only has thumbnails of my photos. But even having the thumbnails allowed me to do a lot of things. I can organize those photos into folders. I can add the photos to albums. I can correct the date on those photos. I can do ratings or other things. My iPad is designated to be something we call Space Saver. Space Saver is Mylio's way of taking a photo and showing you a full version of that file that is very close to the original resolution, but taking very little space. Let me show you an example of this. So I have a folder here on my desktop called TPO, and in there I have 3 versions of the same photo. This little monkey I took a photo of in Singapore. And this is the full-size original, the JPEG version of the full edited original photo. That original was about 4 megabytes. The very, very original was 30 megabytes, the raw version from my camera. The original photo is 4 megabytes. Here's the optimized version. So I can go back and forth between the optimized and the original, and it's going to be very hard for you, especially over a Zoom call, to tell the difference on these photos. I can tell the difference at home because I have a big screen and I can see that the whiskers on the original are a little bit sharper than on the optimized photo. But other than that, the photo looks really good. But it's only about 20% the size, 5% the size of the very original file. So that 30 megabyte file, now I'm seeing only a 500 kilobyte photo, so half a megabyte of the original photo size. And then I have a thumbnail, which is very small, but I can still tell what it is. It's a photo of a monkey. All of these files are going to be available in Mylio. So if I go over here to my photos and I type monkey and in Singapore, there's all the photos of the monkeys and there's that file. That's how quickly and easily I can find this file. And I can ask Mylio to show me all the different versions of that photo that I have. And Mylio is keeping track of every file and is telling me where in my devices each file is kept. So I have the original raw file. I always have access to it. I have the JPEG display image, which is the edited version. And then I have an optimize and a thumbnail. And you'll notice that the optimize and the thumbnail have check marks because that's what lives presently in this device. But on any one of my devices, I can access the exact same photo, and anything I do to a photo on one device is instantly going to be noticeable in other devices. Let me show you that very quickly here. I'm going to go back to that test folder that we discussed before. And I'll pull a photo of a flower here, and then I'll bring my iPad screen again. And we'll go to the same folder. The test folder, there's the flowers folder, there's the same photo. If I start rotating the photo with my iPad, oh, it doesn't want me to edit that photo because it was externally edited. Let me choose a different photo. We'll do the same thing on the iPad. So if I rotate this photo on the iPad, that photo gets rotated on my computer. If I go to the computer and I edit the colors for this photo, maybe I use a preset where I'm going to put a lot of color into it, that change synchronizes to my iPad as well. So everything you do on one device gets synchronized to the other, which means I don't have to travel with a big computer. I can just travel with my iPad and import all my media there. And the moment that that iPad is online, is going to send the original version of my photos to all of my other devices as long as they're online. So this is how my photos get home before I do. I keep my Mac Studio computer at home running. It has the Mylio application running. It has 2 of my hard drives connected to it. And the rest, every time I do something while I'm away from home, if I have an internet connection, those photos get home before I do. Also, they go to Backblaze, which is a cloud-based system, but that's optional. You know, some people don't like cloud storage. So cloud with Mylio is an option. You can just use your own devices and maintain full control and privacy of your photos at any time. Also, you should know that when you add a cloud device with Mylio, one of the things that you can do is you can encrypt your files. So even if I decided to use Google Drive and put all my photos on Google, Google is not going to be able to look at the data on those photos, extract that metadata, and try to target advertisement to me based on the photos that I uploaded to their cloud service. So great opportunity to be able to use cloud services, but keep your data protected and private. Mylio also has its own cloud service that we offer, that is Mylio Drive Plus. And again, that's fully encrypted with encryption, end-to-end 256 end-to-end encryption. Last thing I want to show you, I want to leave a few minutes for questions, is how do I protect my photos while I'm traveling if I don't have an internet connection? And for that, I want to show you that I have a very small drive here. You can see it on the camera. This is just a 1 terabyte drive. My entire library wouldn't fit on this drive. But what I can do is I can turn this into what we call a travel vault. So I'm going to connect this to my Mac Studio here. And I'm going to try to add it as yet another device in Mylio. I'm going to click the Add button. I'm going to say I have an external drive I want to use. And I'm going to select Crucial, which is the drive I just showed you. It has a 1 terabyte drive. When I click Continue, you'll notice that Mylio is suggesting that I only keep my highest rated photos in that drive. And that, I mean, that would work. But what I want to do is I want to use this setting called Travel Backup. And what Travel Backup does is it keeps a full-size copy of all my media from the last 3 months, so from the previous 90 days. So if I'm traveling and I'm taking this drive with me, as long as I'm not traveling longer than 90 days at a time, this drive is going to keep all of the new media that I'm doing over time with me. So I'm going to say looks good. And you can modify this. You can make it 4 months. You can make it 2 months. You could make it, 30 days. All of that is customizable. But what I have now is I have this drive called Crucial. I'm going to change the name. I'm going to call it Travel Drive. And Mylio is going through the process of synchronizing the last 90 days of media to that drive. And if I were to open this drive in the Finder now, and I travel through it, there's a Crucial drive, there's a Mylio folder in it. All of my folders are being replicated into this drive. There's my trips folder. There's folders representing every device. There's that folder for the tests where we've been doing a lot of stuff. But if I open the trips folder, you'll notice that every folder for every trip is there, but not all of them are being populated. Some of them, the older folders, are going to remain empty. The newer folders that have photos from the last 90 days, those folders are going to get populated with the full-size originals. Everything else is going to remain just as an optimized image. It'll still be in that drive. You'll still be able to get a better version than a thumbnail on that drive. But as far as full-size originals that you can use in Mylio or outside of Mylio, is only going to do the last 90 days. So as that synchronization continues, it's telling me right here what it needs to do. Notice that it over here is saying it has a lot of downloading to do. But what's great is that even though this drive is now connected to my Mac at home, I can take it with me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect this drive. I'm going to, in my computer, eject it. I unplugged it. I have the drive now unplugged. And I'm going to plug this drive right into my iPad. So I'm just going to plug the drive right into the iPad, and Mylio is going to keep using it in the same way. So I'm going to share my iPad library here. I'm going to go to my devices on my iPad. I'm going to plug that drive in, and I'm going to click in my iPad the Add button. I'm going to say I have an external drive I want to use. And Mylio shows me what drives are connected to that iPad. There's that crucial drive. So I'm going to select it and click Open. And now that drive is connected to my iPad, and it's continuing the synchronization process that I was doing before. So I can use a travel drive with me and keep an extra copy of all my media while I'm traveling, even without taking a laptop. I can just take my iPad or my iPhone and do the exact same thing. This travel drive functionality works with any iOS device, any Windows computer, or any Mac OS computer. It doesn't currently work with Android devices, but it's something we're working on, and we expect to add it pretty soon. So there you have it. A lot of protection, a lot of ways of organizing your photos, lots of ways to working with your photos while you're traveling, and having all that organization replicate to any one of your devices, even if the device is far away from you. So with that, I'm going to open the floor to any questions. I know I took longer than I expected for the presentation, but Leonard, do we have any questions?
There were some questions, but they were already answered from your support team. But at first, thank you so much, JC. That was quite very interesting, and I think quite impressive how Mylio is syncing all the pictures, thousands of pictures, onto the different devices. So feel free to check into the Q&A section.
I see that Martin has,
Yeah, just dropped in.
so he's
To
saying
answer directly.
manually going over 34,000 images with quick review isn't quick enough. I agree, that could be a lot of work. Could you please let me know what options I have with Mylio when it comes to automating the management of similar images, not duplicates taken in quick succession? Yes, we have a feature specifically for that. It's called declutter, photo declutter. So in the tools menu, I can go to photo dedupe, which will find identical image, or I can go to photo declutter. And photo declutter is going to show me photos that were taken very close to each other with the same camera and the same aspect ratio. And I can apply filters to this just like I can apply filters to anything else in Mylio. Right now I'm seeing 5,000 sets. That's too many. So let's just go to a folder of photos that I took recently. So this past weekend, I went to the shore and did a dive. So I'm going to go to organize by year. I'm going to go to the year 2024. And in December, there's photos that I took this weekend. And I'm going to change, oops, I'm going to add that folder. And then I'm going to change the within here, the scale to photos that were taken within maybe more than just 2 seconds. So let's go as far as 30 seconds of each other. And I can just type as well. So here's a lot of photos that were taken well within 30 seconds of each other, and Mylio has aggregated them into a group. So I can click on that group, and you'll notice that all of the photos are here at the bottom. I can open the information panel and see information about any one of these photos, or I could, for example, turn on my histogram here and turn the exposure and underexposure on. And I could just go through those, and maybe based on the exposure or underexposure, I could select a few of these to be removed. And then when I go back to my full view, photos that are marked, I can just delete or move somewhere else. So that's part of our declutter tool. And there's a lot of other functions in here that that you can use. For example, you can use Mylio to find any photos that are blurry and go ahead and mark those for deletion or removal. So if a photo is blurry or if a photo is underexposed or overexposed, I can run AutoMark on those and it'll show me, let me add that folder again. You'll notice, so right there, it marked a photo that was underexposed for deletion. So these are some of the features within the declutter tool that you can use for narrowing that down. And again, use any filters you want so that you're only working with one group of photos at a time. Martin, I hope that answers your question. The tool goes more in depth than what I show you, but you get an overview of it.
But I think this question leads to another question.
Yeah.
We had so many people who are not using Mylio already. So, what do you suggest for the participants if they start with Mylio? What is the best start with a fresh Mylio library? So, what you recommend?
That's a really good question. And what I always recommend is that you try to make an educated guess about how much storage your library is going to take, right? How many photos you think you're going to have. And then go ahead and acquire a hard drive that is going to fit that entire library. And that's not as difficult as it sounds. You can buy a 4 terabyte or even an 8 terabyte drive for very little money these days. You can even get a 20 terabyte single drive for just a few $100s. So start with a storage device that's going to be the primary repository for all your media. Add that as a device in Mylio. Make sure you designate that drive as a vault. So in my case, I have this drive called main media. That's my primary repository. Grouper and Bluefin, you'll notice I name my drives after fish, are also full repositories of my library. Those are extra backups, right? But main media is the primary drive that's always connected to my desktop computer. It never moves, never goes anywhere. So that's how I started. I added that drive and then I found all the different sources of media that I might have and I added them all to my library. And Mylio has something called guided import that can help you with that. It can say, okay, add the pictures folder from your computer or the movies folder. If you're using an Apple device, you can add your Apple Photos library or photos from your Android phone. If you have photos on Facebook or Instagram or other social media, you can bring them in, or you can just choose a folder of photos right in your computer, import photos from a memory card. And those are just part of the guided setup. There's really no limit to the sources that you can add with Mylio. Anything from online services like Google Photos, Frame.io, which is something that a lot of other software manufacturers are using to collaborate these days. And any media that's accessible or connected to your device, Mylio is just going to give you a standard, in this case, Finder browser. But if this was a Windows computer, it would give you a Windows Explorer browser. And you can navigate and select any type of media that you want. And then when you find a folder of photos, let me just find an example. Let's say that I wanted to add this folder of photos here, and I click open. You have the option to link that folder, copy it, or move it. If you have already added a large storage repository where all these photos are going to be copied to, then you can choose copy. And choosing copy has a lot of advantages because one of the things that you can do is you can ask Mylio to exclude duplicates right away as part of the import process so that you don't later on have to go and find those duplicates, which you can do with the photo dedupe tool in Mylio. But if you can avoid even adding duplicates to your library, then that's a very good way to do it. So start with a large storage device that you think will accommodate your library. Start copying all your media by doing a copy import into Mylio. Mylio, during the import process, is going to generate a lot of the metadata for you. It's going to look at those files and capture dates and locations and model of camera, model of lenses, exposure and shutter speed information, all kinds of things. It's going to log all of that into a database, which will be immediately searchable. And then in addition to that, it'll do things like character recognition for reading text that's in any photo or file. It'll do smart tagging, so it'll find objects like monkeys or water that are part of a photo. All of that will happen automatically during the import process. So sometimes import seems low when you're using Mylio compared to other applications. It's because it's doing a lot. It's finding faces, it's reading text, et cetera, et cetera. So hope that answers that question.
Okay, thank you. And
You're welcome.
there are no other questions, but maybe you showed shortly the public and private folder. So maybe other the album segments.
Oh
Would you
yeah.
tell about this
So
feature?
there's a feature we call spaces, and
Yes, spaces,
spaces
exactly.
lets you create specific subsegments of your library so that you're only working with a group of photos at a time. So for example, if I go here to my calendar view, you're seeing all kinds of photos, family photos, underwater photos, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right now I'm in what is called the public space. You see that the words public are on the top there. Um, I could switch to the everywhere space or everything space. That would show everything, including private photos. But I don't want you guys to see my private photos, so I'm not going to switch to that space. But I have created a custom space for myself called underwater. So if I switch to that custom space, you'll notice that my calendar view has changed. And no longer do I see all kinds of photos. I'm only seeing underwater photos in my calendar view. And if I switch to other views like the map view, you'll notice that I'm only seeing photos display in the map view that are underwater photos. And my all photos view has gone from showing me 54,000 photos that I had before to only 5,000. So I'm still working with my entire library is still available to me, but I asked Mylio to only show me a segment of that library. In this case, photos that I've categorized as underwater photos. And categorizing those photos is very easy because my folder structure allows me to assign the underwater category to a folder, and anything inside that folder inherits that category. So that's how spaces work. And the spaces feature is one that's very, very capable. It allows you to create a lot of exclusions and create device-centric views that are going to protect parts of your library. So I could do things like I could create a space and assign that space, say, to my iPad, where people wouldn't see every view or where people wouldn't be able to do certain things with my files. So I could say on this iPad, when the other underwater space is selected on or assigned to that iPad, people are not able to modify my photos in any way or edit my photos or share them. And they don't have access to album or people. So I can modify all kinds of things and create very specific controls for a subset of my library and then designate that space to a device. And I can do that from another device. So I could go here in my devices panel. I could select, for example, my Pixel phone and say, this device should be assigned the family space. So whenever I open Mylio on that device, or so another family members opens Mylio on that device, they only have access to a subset of your library with the restrictions or permissions that you have designated for that particular space. And again, we could do an entire webinar on just spaces, and it would take us more than an hour, but that's a brief overview of it.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. There was one question in the chat. Maybe it's not so easy to answer. What is the main difference from other competitor softwares? So I think we have seen
Well,
already a lot of features, but
yeah, there's a lot of differences. One of the primary differences is that we are kind of hardware agnostics. So Mylio works on Windows, Mac OS, iOS, and Android, and it works the same on all those operating systems. So you can have an Android phone and an Apple computer and share your photos without any issues. You can, your spouse might have an Apple device and you might have a Windows device, and you can share a common library between the two of you. That is something that nobody else is doing. Our photos are kept locally in your devices for the most part, unless you choose to have a cloud-based storage, which is completely optional. Your photos are definitely private and under your control. They are stored locally, and the synchronization that happens from one device to another is something that's very unique to Mylio. You can try to use Lightroom, for example, but you're only going to have one library and one library view, unless you create multiple libraries, but then you have to switch libraries. With Mylio, you can just switch with space and have a subset of the library. And Lightroom is not going to synchronize, Lightroom Classic is not going to synchronize between devices. It only works in one device. Um, so lots of different differentiations depending on what application you're talking about. Apple Photos is a great application. If you get to a certain library size, it starts not working very well. And good luck using it with a non-Apple product. Uh, so it's all about what it is that you want to do and what level of control you want to have with your photos. Google Photos is another example. You can put all your photos in Google Photos. The first thing Google Photos is going to do is they're going to reduce the resolution on your photos to 20 megapixels. Anything over 20 megapixels is going to get compressed down. So now you have a copy of your library that's lower resolution than the local copy of your library you might have. And they're not going to have as much control as to how you tag photos. For example, I can go to any photo of a person, and even if the face of that person is not recognizable, like here's an example, Mylio doesn't recognize that there's a face because my wife is wearing a mask. Well, I can just click and hold and still add a face tag for my wife there. This is something that is much more difficult or not possible to do in other software applications. So it really depends on the application. But just so you know, our focus with Mylio is on organization and access and protection to that library. So we have a lot of organization tools, and we have the facility to synchronize your library from one device to another. So you don't have to sit in front of your computer to do all the work. You don't have to carry a large hard drive with you to be able to see all your photos. They're always on your phone. That is our main goal. We're not a great editing tool. I wouldn't call Mylio the best editing tool out there. We have some basic editing. We rather have you work with better editing tools. So like this photo right here, I wouldn't try to edit it in Mylio. I would just say, Mylio, let me edit this with Photoshop. And Mylio would say, okay, you want to edit the raw file original? Yes. And then Mylio will launch Photoshop for me. It'll let me do whatever work I want there. And then I'll save that file and see the results right back in Mylio. So I could very quickly do an auto correction of this photo and change certain things, like perhaps use the dehaze filter here and correct the exposure. And I could save this file as what we call a display image and instantly see the changes in Mylio while still having access to the full resolution file. And I don't lose anything. So just to complete the trip here, oops, I'll go ahead and say save a copy, and I'm going to save this copy with the suffix display, and I'm saving that to the exact same folder that the original photo came from. And when I save that file and I go to Mylio, Mylio is going to recognize that a change was made to that image. And in a few seconds here, it'll show me the updated version of it. Sometimes it takes a minute. It's scanning through all of my folders. So, of course, now it's taking longer than usual because you're all washing.
As always.
I'll leave it open here, and it will show up soon enough. But yeah, that's how we differentiate ourselves. If there's a specific piece of software that someone has in mind and they want to know the differences between it and Mylio, I could address that specifically. But you know, there's just so many features and so much that we can do that it's hard to just answer that question directly.
Yeah, but I think that was enough of a question. Perfect. I think we can wrap it up, and
All
I
right.
will just shortly change to the last sheet. So, but before I wrap it up, like the final reminders. So you will receive a recording of the webinar. So we will send out the email afterwards, maybe tomorrow morning because it's quite late already. So you can revisit, and you can also join the Mylio community. As we stated, there are lots of other different webinars and very good tips and tricks to learn how to use Mylio. And of course, you can use the bonus, so you get 2 months, 3 months of Mylio Photos plus, so the subscription version, and the free one-on-one setup. So this gives you a power start into using Mylio, and you just have to go to the address on mylio.com/16-days. But we will send the link as well with including the recording to all participants later. So thank you, JC, for your time.
You're very welcome.
Like for more than 1 hour of detailed explanation on how to use Mylio on thousands of travel pictures. And I hope you enjoyed the webinar. And thanks for coming and joining us. We hope you're leaving with a lot of fresh ideas and really now like a new idea to try out Mylio. And if you like, feel free to drop a note into the chat if you're thinking that like after the webinar you're going to use or going to try Mylio for the first time or like wherever. And behalf of the entire team here, also thank you to the support team. We wish you a happy evening or happy day and a nice holiday time. And maybe see you at the next webinar. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
And thank you and goodbye.